us. We're out of place, I'm doing fine, I'm feeling great. You're not my fan, you can't relate. Straight talk going, it's not safe. Before you cross me, look both ways. Leaving the scene with no trace, none in my league. You out of place, I'm not at the top, I'm outer space. Can't eat with us, we're out of place. I'm doing fine, I'm feeling great. You're not my fan, you can't relate. Straight talk going, state to state.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your host, your boy, George McKay, back again, Straight Talk Studios with another amazing conversation. Now, this is going to drop sometime in February. I am recording it in January, but it still doesn't take away from the awesomeness that is about to happen. Without further ado, please help me welcome one of the OGs in the Ontario indie scene, a Canadian legend, in my opinion. Since it's my show, my opinion is all that matters. Please help me welcome the one, the only, Rip Impact to Straight Talk Wrestling. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. That was quite the introduction. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good to be here, so thank you.
Oh, no problem. It's an honor to be here. You know, I've had so many of your students on this show. To mention a couple names: Travis Moore, Mike Forte, most recently Johnny DeLuca. So a lot of up and comers in the Ontario scene. You've had a hand. You've sprinkled that magic fairy dust, if you will, and you've really established a couple of young up and comers. So we know that the scene for a very long time will be in very good and capable hands. But today we're going to talk not so much about the students, but about the master, because, you know, as it is, there's always a Mr. Miyagi to every Daniel son. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Let's talk about you. I mean, 2005, if I've done my research correct, and I know enough about your career to know that you've been around for 16 years, grinding, working, winning titles, losing titles, always willing to take one to help somebody up and coming go over. And you've held so many championships in Ontario. Most recently, a company who I'm affiliated with, HWE, you had quite the title reign as the epitome of wrestling. And yeah, you had quite the reign. And unfortunately, the reign came to an end just before the end of 2021. Lost it to Tyler Turva, but I'm sure there's a rematch in the works for when shows open up. But
I certainly hope so.
Well, I hope so too. I mean, it was a great storyline, but I got to talk about that because you're one of the sweetest, kindest, most easygoing people in the ring. But man, when you have to play a heel, you could turn it up. So I guess my first question in this is, playing a heel, playing a face, what do you enjoy more, knowing that once the cameras are off or once you're not performing, you're very just chill. You're one of the most chill guys that I've ever seen in this business.
That's a great question. I look at it from different dynamics now, because I mean, people have said, and I don't want to compare myself to like the great of all time, like a Ricky Steamboat or a Rey Mysterio, but those are two guys that have predominantly been babyface their entire careers. I mean, you don't look at them ever having a real heel run. I'm very similar to that sense as far as Ontario indie wrestling comes. I've been typically a babyface for, you mean, the better part of actually since 2004. So you mean 17 years or something like that now. I'm losing track, but I've been a babyface almost the whole time. There's been opportunities and times during that outside of Ontario where I've been a heel. If it's been across northern or western Canada doing tours, I've had the chance to be a heel there. Or doing some work in the States, I've had some chance to be a heel there, which is always fun. But most recently, it's been like my real prominent heel run starting at HWE, expanding to a couple other promotions now, like PPO and Burlington, and possibly more in the future. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's definitely different for me, but if I have to choose one or the other, I mean, I try to be a pretty chill, good guy outside of the ring, and I like doing that inside the ring as well. So I like being that baby face, but I'm definitely having a lot of fun being on the other side of it and doing some heel work lately.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned like Ricky Steamboat and Rey Mysterio. You're right; those two guys, if you look back at their careers, have never really had a heel run. There may have been opportunities to turn heel that they never pursued. Would you say now, going in your actually 18th year, we had to both correct ourselves because this is 2004, your 18th year, going into your 18th year, having that heel run in your 17th year, was that a breath of fresh air for you as a performer? After, like you said, predominantly your whole career sitting there being this, hey, I'm Rip Impact, I'm happy to be here, I'm for the fans, to being like, you know what? Screw the fans. It's all about me right now. I just want to rack up gold. I want to be the Ontario belt collector, if you will. Was it a hard transition for some of your fan base to buy into? Like, hold on, this is not the Rip that I know. I don't like this Rip.
Definitely. Yeah, that's another great question. It's definitely been a breath of fresh air. It's been something different and fun for me. I've got to try out different things I don't normally do, change up my moveset just a little bit. I mean, just have some different nuances and character traits I get to put out there, which have been a lot of fun. And the other part of that question is how my fans and stuff reacting, because I'm very thankful to have a loyal fan base that have been supporting me, for the 18 years of wrestling now. Some of them see me in the early years, some of them are new fans, and some of them are in the middle. And there have been a couple times in Ontario wrestling, as I mentioned, not just outside Ontario, other provinces or other states, where they have tried to do a heel run with me, but never really took off and got the steam behind it for multiple reasons. I remember a company in Niagara Falls called Busted Knuckle Pro Wrestling, probably in 2010 or 11, sometime probably 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, tried to turn me heel. And I mean, it had the right setup. It just didn't click. Fans were still cheering for me. People still liked me, no matter what I did. I mean, I had half the crowd behind me and some of the crowd impartial, and then the other remaining crowd not liking me. Was that a trait to my heel work or the booking? I'm not really sure. I can't really say. There was one other time for Death Proof Wrestling where it looked successful, where I did do a heel turn. It's still talked about a little bit to this day. I came out, I was part of the whole Death Proof culture, where they had the hardcore wrestling and did all that. They had like some kind of contest or something like that. I was a judge for it, and they got the crowd really, really riled up. And then that particular night during that promo, I turned heel. You know what I mean? I spit in someone's face. I gave them a pile driver. I threw people out. So that was a lot of fun turning heel. With that crowd, I was able to get that across. Unfortunately, that heel run never really stuck with me because I didn't get to follow up and do too much more with Death Proof after that because my schedule got very busy. I started taking more tours, traveling across Canada and touring more. So it's hard for me to honor those Death Proof dates. So that heel run never really stuck. So now, I mean, it's almost 2 years coming on the pandemic era of wrestling, but it was March 2020, right before everything started with this, is when I turned heel at HWE. And that was a blast because it was in my hometown, Hamilton, Ontario, somewhere I'm very proud to be from, somewhere that I think is a great city for wrestling. And I think turning heel was definitely a breath of fresh air. And the way we did it, I think it was kind of the right place, right time. I think I have a lot of factors. And I think where we did it at HWE was also a great fit. And it's great having you a part of that. I mean, doing commentary now and being part of the team, because you guys as commentators can help tell that story and narrate the story that we're putting out there. But being a heel now at HWE and now into PWO, it's a lot of fun because it's a breath of fresh air. I get to revitalize things. I get to work with people, new people that I haven't wrestled yet before, and also other people that I have, but in a different dynamic. Even Tyler Turbo, we have wrestled several times before, but it's always been either, babyface, or he's the heel and I'm the babyface. So it was a lot of fun where I was the heel and he was the babyface, which led to a whole different dynamic for a match. And now with HWE, with a new platform, it's a fairly new audience to a lot of it. And some of the favorites have got to see my heel turn and progression, and they can get behind me being heel now if they love to hate me or hate to love me. They get it because now the difference is I have motives, I have reasons behind my heel turn, as opposed to just me turning heel for no reason. And we tried to come up with reasons before, but now I really have reasons, and a lot of it comes to running the school, having my students, seeing a lot of them get the spotlight that I rightly feel like I deserve, if you will, and kind of going with that. That answers the question.
It absolutely does, And you mentioned some of the students that you've turned out and helped mold. I mean, I look at a guy like Johnny DeLuca, who's been around the scene for a very long time, but it's coming up so strong. And I was able to not only have the honor of calling your run or the last half of your run, but to also call his run as the TV champion. And we talked a lot about, you know, him developing and where the developmental came from. And also too, the one thing I admire about Johnny DeLuca is he's a big boy like me, but man, he fly around that ring. So somebody like yourself who has passed on knowledge, when you see a student like that and you see the inside agility, because a lot of times people look at body types and they be misconception, oh, this guy's just going to get handled in the ring. This guy's not going to have the stamina in the ring. This guy's not going to have the agility to pull this stuff off. But then as you're working with a student and you start to see these developments, how do you as a coach, I mean, this is great because I've never really had a coach and a performer on the show at the same time. So how do you as a coach look at a guy like Johnny DeLuca and say, okay, I see what's inside. Now I've just got to find a way to get it out.
Absolutely. It's a great question. I mean, number one answer is we lean into it. We lean into that as much as possible. I mean, Paul Heyman said it was you separate someone's strengths, you highlight people's strengths, you hide their weaknesses. I mean, I believe that, or you want to showcase their strengths and hide their weaknesses, but I still think you should be working on their weaknesses so those weaknesses can become strengths as well. Johnny, in my opinion, among a few of my other students, they're the full package. They have it all. And like you said, students, talents, wrestlers, they all come in all different shapes and sizes. There's not one cookie cutter size or build for a wrestler right now. I think people surprise people. I mean, there's small guys like Travis Moore who have so much heart. And for a kid his size, he's a strong kid. He's a very strong kid for a kid's size. And then there's people like Johnny DeLuca, who's a bigger guy, or even Wonder or Wade Allen. He's a much bigger guy, but Wade's very agile for his size as well. But Johnny specifically, he's got the whole package. He came into me at like a very young age, which is awesome. I love starting with guys when they're, 16, 17, whatever he was. It was very young. He came in with a little bit of a jiu-jitsu background, and he just took to wrestling. Like he was one of those like prodigies where he just like picked it up. Was always there training 2-3 days a week with me, constantly training. And he still tries to get down there wherever he can. And Johnny's also a very like humble kid. I'm sure you picked up from your interview. He's very humbled, very respectful. I mean, his parents raised him right. I mean, they did a great job, and I love his dad, one of his biggest supporters. It's just so having that respect from like your student, like all my students do, but having that extra sign of respect from him where he's like really listening to what you say and like really taking like any constructive criticism or feedback as best you can is only going to help him excel. So working with Johnny through the years and seeing his succession and his improvements and how far he's come and seeing both Johnny and Evan Greenway debut at the Destiny show back in December, that was awesome. That was huge. Like having those two guys debut on a big platform. I think there's unlimited potential and a bright future.
And it must be cool. It must be like a proud dad moment when you see a couple guys you've trained walk through the I mean, when you look at promotions in Ontario, Destiny Wrestling easily top 5. And I'm not taking anything away from any other promotion out there. Every other promotion has their specialties, but Destiny really has that tie-in with Impact. And they also bring in like top tier talent from all over the world. And when you get to, as a teacher, you get to see 2 of your students run through the curtain. I mean, be honest with me, Rip, did you have a little bit of tears in your eyes?
For sure. It was awesome. And I wasn't even sure I was going to head out that day. And then I was contemplating going back and forth. I had the day off, no training, nothing going on that day. So I was like, I'm going to head out there and just watch the show and just support it. And that decision was secured even a few hours earlier when I got a message from Evan and Johnny saying that they were on the show. They just found out that day. And I had to be there for it. And it was definitely those moments. I actually just posted about that recently with the Hamilton Pro show I did the week before in December. It's 100% a proud dad or a proud coach trainer moment. And there is nothing that matches it. There's nothing more rewarding than seeing your students, seeing these people you trained and work with, seeing these people you've bonded a friendship with, like live out a childhood dream. Accomplish a goal, debut for a big promotion like Destiny. It's the most rewarding feeling ever. And I think it's literally what fuels me as a coach. I'm very lucky and fortunate that wrestling It's my full-time career. I get to wrestle, basically every weekend when things are going busy. I get to keep busy with the training school every day of the week, or 3-4 days of the week. You know what I mean? So I'm very lucky in that sense. But honestly, money aside, job aside, I would just do it because I love professional wrestling. And I love other people that love professional wrestling, like yourself and all my students who train with me. So that's the reason why I do it, because it's just, I love pro wrestling. It's simply put. And these other people like Johnny love pro wrestling. And these other people like I've had debuting recently, they love it. It's a childhood dream for them. It's a goal. And it's the most proud, rewarding moment for me to watch them live out that opportunity.
Absolutely. And in Ontario, we have one of the most supportive scenes. We have great fans here. We have great promotions that share talent, but we also have a little bit of negativity, as in every scene. There is those fans that go too far sometimes. There are those keyboard warriors who I absolutely love to shout out and highlight as often as I can. Fuck each and every one of you, because you have no idea the amount of work we all put in to giving you our art, as in me with the conversations, you with your school and training, and you're performing as well in the ring full time. Like, people just don't get it. So say what you want to say, but anybody that steps through those rings, I have the utmost respect for, and I hold you very, very high. And I'm sorry that it's taken this long to get you on the show. It's just never synced up. It's never synced up. Thank God. And I'll be honest, I'm going to call myself out. I spoke to Rip about getting this recorded back in December, and then things got crazy with me. I had some personal challenges I had to overcome. So he was gracious enough to reach back out to me a week ago and say, hey man, are we going to have that conversation? And I was like, wow, what an asshole I am. Yes, let's do it. Let's do it quickly. But I'm honored that you decided that you stuck with it, and you came back, and we're doing it now, which is great. And having conversations, being able to pick your brain, this is an honor for me in a geek out moment. This isn't just, me sitting down with my friend Rip. This is me sitting down with the epitome of wrestling in Ontario. This is the king, the Creo. Listen, you're like the Undertaker of the Ontario scene, okay? If you want to go over, you got to go toe-to-toe with Rip Impact. If you don't, then there's no point. Then you might as well hang up your boots. But I do have one person that I think, when it comes to certain appearanceal features, I think he has you, and that's Mike Forte. And when it comes down to hair, Mike Forte has you on the hair, Rip. Now, how hard is that when you look at a chiseled block of stone like Mike Forte, and you say, fucking asshole has the hair? Yes.
He has the hair. I mean, he's got his own shampoo line now, right? They have their own shampoo line between him and Tyler Arrow. And Forte, though, has those luscious locks. He's got some beautiful hair. It's I love it. And it's funny because Mike's got such an interesting story. And again, we won't spend too much time on my students, but I love talking about them. So Forte's got such an interesting story about his wrestling journey and all the things he's overcome. We talk about some negativity and obstacles, and he's overcome so much in his career. And I was super happy to be a part of it. Just, I'm sure he's told the story before, but just me just calling him up one day. I barely even knew him. We just had a mutual friend, and just calling him up one day when I had the school open and say, hey, I know you've had a tough year, but why don't you just come down to the school once? Come down to the school once. Maybe we can see if you get back into wrestling, see if you're still interested in it. And this is, a few years ago. Ever since he came out at one time, we met up at Tim Hortons, and then he came down to the school at one time. He's been with me ever since. And it's funny because his first year with me and so on, people always said that we're very similar. We looked alike. Except the nice head of hair, though. Even a nicer head of hair, but we both have the long hair. We have similar size and frame and stuff like that. He's a bit muscular and bigger now. But he's another guy that has a ton of talent and a very bright future ahead. I think we have a lot of fun. I don't want to step on toes of Tyler Arrow, but I think Mike Forte and I would have a lot of fun tag teaming. I've teamed with Arrow before. It'd be fun to team with Forte. I've teamed with both of them before on the first ever HWE show in a trios tag, which was fun. I'd like to hopefully relight that fire in 2022 or 2023 and do some more tag work or trios work with those guys.
Absolutely. I would love to see that. I look at, you mentioned Hamilton being a great city for wrestling, and it's right. You look at all the promotions that have come out of there. HWE is one, HPW, your promotion, which we're going to get into in a bit. Also Alpha One. a lot of promotions, Courage Pro Wrestling. There's even more that I probably can't list, but I'm having a little bit of a brain fart, if you will. But I can't really. But there's so much. Is it insane how much promotions are in just that one city, but yet there's enough room for everyone within that one city? If you think about it, in Ontario, there's probably, I want to say, upwards of 30 promotions, but a good 5 to 7 are just in Hamilton. Like, how insane is that?
It's nuts. That speaks for the history of Hamilton. I mean, I've recently done a couple documentaries that will be released the next little while. One specifically focusing on the history of Hamilton. It's going to be called The Factory, because Hamilton used to be called The Factory because we were the city that was constantly producing some of the best wrestlers in the 70s and 80s. And I think now we're producing some of the best talent, not to toot my own horn, but we got a lot of talent out there. They're constantly wrestling on a lot of shows and debuting and keeping busy. If you look at any show on any given weekend, chances are it's got a couple HPW students on it. I'm very proud of that. But just the city of Hamilton itself, its history, it's very rich. But now in the current day, you know, I mean, going back a couple of years and even this day, you're right. Even if HW is not running there as much right now because they're doing their thing at Bowers and Mississauga, HPW is going very strong. We got sold out crowds all the time. Alpha One before the pandemic was doing something awesome. They have a great mix of their core talent and American talent, which is, I think, a huge part of why all these promotions can be successful, because we're all offering something a little bit different. Alpha One had that American talent, and in the mix of their roster, HPW has strictly all students trained by me at the school. It's just a core roster of all the HPW guys that train with me. It's the HPW shows. That's just to showcase and focus on them. Courage Pro has a mix of Ontario talent and a lot of my guys. And just everything's a little bit different than what we're doing in this area. So I think everyone has a chance to excel in their own way and present something a little bit different. And just speaking on HPW before we get too much into it, I'm very lucky with HPW because we have a very loyal, like I said, hardcore fan base that allowed us to sell out all our shows. But the great thing about our crowd is it's just a little bit different than every other crowd or audience out there, because we have a lot of friends, family, co-workers of the students and stuff. So a lot of these people are seeing wrestling for the first time, which is a cool dynamic. And some of them aren't even seeing it. They kind of just follow HPW. It's like I don't know, 75% of it is like the HPW audience. And then 25% is like that spring mixing of like the hardcore loyals from Hamilton or Ontario indie wrestling that you'd see, like Chops, you know what I mean, the Hensher family, and like a bunch of those others that are just like those diehard fans that go every show. But we have a lot of our own audience as well, which is really special.
It is special. And just to cycle back real quick, because we talked a lot about, we were talking briefly about keyboard warriors and the negativity that comes with it. Most recently, I want to touch on the Travis Moore situation that happened a few months back, and actually happened right around the same time I had him on the show. And we talked a lot about that and the trash talk that was coming from one individual. And I'm not even going to give the spotlight to that individual. I won't mention any names. But the fact is that the whole scene, and yourself included, everyone came to Travis's not defense, but came to Travis's aid in saying, listen, whatever nonsense you want to spew, save it, because we're here in this community. We're not going to have that. So when you see that, when you see one of your students being torn down by a quote unquote keyboard warrior or a bully in this world that we have today, because social media is great for reaching out to different places, making different connections, but it's also great for giving everyone the power to do whatever they really want and not really have any kind of, other than doing like really illegal shit, you're not going to get in trouble for, you can get banned for a week or get put in Facebook jail, that kind of stuff, but there's never really any consequences. Thank you. But when you see something like that and you see fellow students, fans in the scene, people like myself getting involved and saying, listen, this is not, whatever you're saying is not cool, you're a complete moron. Does that reignite the fact that this scene has such a great base around it, from performers to promotions to fans?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely reignites and really cements that this scene, I'd say for the majority of it, has a very supportive atmosphere. HBW specifically is a positive, encouraging, all-inclusive, open to anyone environment. It's been like that since we started 5.5 years ago, school and going. It's crazy saying it's 5.5 years now. But it's been like that since the get-go. I mean, we're open to having anyone in there as long as it's a positive atmosphere. We try to always stay drama-free. As you mentioned, though, unfortunately, sometimes people get tied to things because people just like to speak up online because they have that opportunity outlet and they feel they should, they feel like they want to. I think my guys handle it well. I think staying clear from most of that drama is always important. And I think, like you said, it just speaks volumes on, I guess, the respect that maybe I have in school and my students have, and just the scene has in general, that there's so many people that have each other's back, that are supportive, that are encouraging, that will always send a message or say, hey, don't worry about that. And just have someone like Travis more back, have his back.
Absolutely. And, you know, you're right. It's crazy. 5.5 years. And I know it's a showcase. I know it's mostly showcasing the students and stuff like that. So I have to ask. Yeah. I have to ask from a coach perspective. You got a guy like Johnny DeLuca walk in. You run him through a couple of exercises. He signs up. Yeah. We go working. We get through all the A's and B's. You know, he crosses every box. He checks every mark. And all of a sudden, boom. Okay, Johnny, guess what? Today is character day. Mike Forte, today is character day. Travis Moore, today is character day. We are going to design who you are going to present yourself out there as a ring. When you look at Johnny DeLuca, where did vitamin D come from? When you look at Travis Moore, where did the day tripper come from? And I know that you give your students a lot of creative freedom, and that's awesome. But when your students come to you with an idea, like, have you ever had a student come to you and say, Rip, listen, man, I want to be like a barbarian clown. And you sit there and you go, you know, maybe we'll start slow and then we'll build.
Yeah.
How do you kind of talk a student down that has so much creative energy coming through in one shot?
That's a great question. You've got a lot of good questions. So with the Academy and with myself in general, I think it's pretty known I'm a wrestling first, character second type of person. That's not taking away how important character, charisma, and those natural abilities are. That's extremely important, I'd say. You have to battle, if not more. I just work with my strengths. I'm a pro wrestler at heart. I love the art of pro wrestling and the technique and the movements and everything goes into it, of all styles. If it's the North American style, the Japanese, British, Lucha Libre, Mexican style. I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of people from different places and learn all those styles so I can coach them and teach them all that on top of the drills and exercises we do to get our guys ready. As far as characters and working on that, we definitely obviously never neglect that. I think going forward, we're probably even going to put more focus on it because we haven't put as much focus as we probably should. So we're going to put more focus on that going forward. I have someone that I'm working with that's going to help the guys with a little bit of improv skills, promos, and a few other things going into 2022 now and going forward.
I'm available for that too.
Example,
yeah,
definitely.
I could talk on the mic like nobody, and I've spit some pretty good promos. Listen, I almost beat Jeremy Prophet in a promo contest, but then he schooled me. But I almost beat him. I was this close.
Good. We'll definitely talk about that. But you're right. I give my guys a lot of creative freedom. I think it's important for them to have that creative freedom to think of their ideas themselves, and then I can help them tweak that. If it's thinking of just a wrestling name, if it's the idea of what they're going to wear for the wrestling gear or outfit, if it's a nickname or character they want to lead into. The whole thing with Johnny, which I think you touched about a little bit with the mini host, the whole vitamin D thing came from Raunchy Nuts. AC Coca, Raunchy, you know what I mean? They've all been in the same circle together. AC and Raunchy actually met through training at HBW. They met through there, but Johnny had actually done jiu-jitsu training with Raunchy around his circle in his schools a little bit, so they knew each other a little bit through that. So there's a natural friendship, and that's another thing we can talk about. It's just the natural relationships and friendships that I got to see develop over all the years at the school, and we'll go into that a bit later. It's just incredible though. But the whole vitamin D thing from Johnny came right from Raunchy Nuts, and I think it works because he's Johnny D, or he's Johnny DeLuca. right? So the whole vitamin D thing came from that, and the possible innuendos and things that could be applied from Raunchy Nuts and where they went with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Travis Moore he's actually in a state right now. He's really kind of rediscovering himself. He's figuring out who he wants to be and kind of really finding his identity. He's tried out a couple of things. Travis Moore has a fun story. When he first started, he got the name Travis just from a misunderstanding. If I can recall correctly, it was Wade Allen, who after training one day had just met him, and as he was leaving, he was wishing him safe travels, and for whatever reason, I think Wade heard "Safe Travis," so that ended up becoming Travis Moore's gimmick. He gave the name Travis, and he chose Travis Moore. And I love the name Moore because I mean, there's wrestling favorites like guys that he liked, like Shannon Moore, but there's also guys that I think it's a throwback that a lot of people don't realize to my original trainer, was the executioner Ernie Moore. So having the name Travis Moore is kind of cool and special. But when he first started, he was Safe Travis Moore. He kind of came out wearing these like bright yellow, almost like reflector-like tights and gears. This is very short-lived. He did a couple of things sometimes where it was kind of like that short run that Crash Holly had, where he might go to the top rope and then climb down to the middle rope and then climb down to the bottom rope and not take any risk. He was very safe. And that's where Safe Travis Moore came. And then he developed into Unsafe Travis Moore. And then he developed into the Day Tripper. And right now he's really trying to find his identity. So all I can say is keep your eyes on Travis Moore. I think he's another one with bright future. And I think he's going to be really finding who he is this year. And I think a lot of people are going to really get behind him.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. I mean, all the students that you mentioned, even the Wanderer Wade Allen, I mean, he's impressive in the ring as all hell. And he's somebody that I have to get on the show. So I know Wade's probably watching this one. So Wade, if you're watching, hit me up. Let's make some magic happen. But right now we can't focus on you, Wade. We got to focus on Rip. Okay, we got to focus on the epitome. I'm sorry. Please don't get mad at me, Rip. I apologize.
No worries.
So you talked about friendships that develop. You talk about friendships that develop, but there's also got to be some in-house rivalry, but all in the spirit of competition. So absolutely. Out of all your students who train together or work at the shows together, who's got that real competitive fire? Like Travis Moore looks at Andrew Love and says, yeah, I think today I want to go to town on you for a little bit, but I want to tangle with you for a little bit. Or Forte looks across the ring and says, wait, let's dance. Who's got that real great bond, but also has that healthy competitive spirit that's the person they always want to work with or always want to fight with, build that rivalry, if you will?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I've been very lucky just to see these people who, if I never have to step and pull myself back. Now, if I never started, Hamilton Pro Wrestling, like the HW Academy and everything like that, if I never started that, I have to think that like a lot of these people never would have met each other. A lot of these like real life friendships outside of the training academy or shows that have become real friends. We even have like people that have become a relationship and stuff like that. Outside of the school, maybe they never would have met each other. So it's pretty cool to kind of think about that. And it's really neat to see that, and the bond between like AC and Raunchy, who met in school, and now they're business partners and they're best friends. And even having Johnny DeLuca in that group, and having Forte and Arrow and the relationship there is really awesome and really special to see. And that's another thing that's very rewarding and very cool outside of just seeing people wrestle and accomplish a goal or live out or do something fun they love to do like I do. There's a bigger impact there, no pun intended, that like these people have these relationships now that they can go for sushi, that they can go and play games or go out and hang out in the movies or hang out outside the ring. And that's just awesome. I love it. But as far as that friendly, competitive mindset, that's a good one. I have to think about that. I think the Travis Moore, he's got that kind of he's a smaller guy, so he's got kind of that, I don't want to say smaller guy syndrome, but he's always one who's stubborn to prove himself in a good way. He's always competitive. he's scrappy. He always wants to, you know what I mean, do what the other guys are doing. So he's definitely competitive in a sense. I mean, it comes to what we're doing, right? If if we have a day of training or a week of training where we're focusing on high flying, I mean, Tyler Arrow is always competitive with what he's doing. I have another student named Robbie Cosmos who's going to be breaking out. He's also, I mean, one of the best flyers around, and those guys can have a friendly rivalry of one-upmanship. You know what I mean? Someone might do you mean a moonsault, and someone does a 450, and someone does a shooting star. So they're always kind of one upping each other. And then we have some guys that are just like naturally strong. I mean, Forte and Wade and Evan, some of the other guys are just strong guys. So we're always kind of in a friendly way competing with one another, because I think that is good. I think it's good for morale. I think it's good for the environment. I think it makes everyone better when you can kind of, at the end of the day, compete with yourself, which is the most important thing, and just get better day by day. But still have those friendly rivalries where you want to be a little bit better than the other guy. I mean, you want to do the best you can. You know what I mean? While always, of course, supporting and encouraging and being happy for our guys. I mean, not many of our guys are the jealous type. They're always, someone gets an opportunity, they're right there supporting the other guy, which is, at the end of the day, I couldn't ask for anything more than that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's exactly what you want as a coach. You want to see everybody flourish safely and happily, and you want everybody to have that balance where they can go out and they can have those friendships. And at the end of the day, it's all about chasing that dream, chasing that brass ring. Right. So, I mean, going on 18 years. I mean, so much has been accomplished. You've got a successful school, you've got a successful promotion. You've held so many titles that I couldn't even list them. I don't even know why your walls behind you are white right now. There should be all kinds of titles back there, but they're literally, just go to his, cage match, and you'll see all the accolades that this man has. The titles are impressive, but an 18-year career is impressive, and you've got a lot more in the tank to go. But eventually, there's a time when, and I don't want to get too somber right now, but there is a time when everybody's got to leave the ring for the final time. So knowing that, not that the end is anywhere near, but knowing that it's there in the distance, it is there. Everyone has that end. What is the impression like when you look at your whole career, whether it's 25, 30 years, when you decide this is it, Rip Impact, I'm done. I just want to coach and I want to watch my students grow, and I just don't want to perform anymore because I'm exhausted. My body's been through hell and back. When you look at the Ontario scene, and the scene that you've been such a big part of for almost 2 decades now, and I hope it to be many, many more. I really do. When you look at it though, and all the smoke is cleared and Rip Impact has left his boots in the ring, what's the one thing you want people to remember Rip Impact for?
Oh, you touched on a lot of things there.
I know.
I'm very thankful to have the career I have had. I'm very thankful for all the opportunities. I'm obviously very thankful the company has entrusted me to be their champions. I've been, like I said, fortunate to have won dozens of championships over all the years, which is just an awesome accomplishment. And it shows that the company has trust in you. I believe when you win a championship, you're not just winning, a prize or a prop. I think it shows that the company and the fans, for every reason, have a lot of belief and trust in you. So I think it's very important when you win those championships. I'm very thankful to win a lot. When I started wrestling, I've always had certain goals and end games. I wanted to, everyone has a goal or a dream when they start wrestling. If it's just I have students as well that have, they just want to wrestle one match, or they want to main event one show, or they want to have a tryout, or they want to make it to WWE, they want to headline WrestleMania, whatever those goals are. I've been very lucky in my almost, 2 decades, almost 20-year career almost now, to have accomplished all my goals. I've been very fortunate. I've got to travel across several parts of the world, which is great. And I still have some more traveling ahead of me, which I'm looking forward to. And that was always one thing that was very special to me with wrestling, is I get to travel to all these places. I get to go, somewhere like Mexico to train and wrestle and live there for a little while. And it's just because I love wrestling. That's the best thing I could ask for. You know what I mean? If I get to travel across Canada to all different provinces, you know what I mean, like a all expenses paid trip across Canada to the West Coast or the East Coast because I love wrestling. That's the best thing. It's super. I'm super grateful for those opportunities. But if there's anything I want to leave in my legacy, and you're right, it's been almost 20 years already. But I ask, what's the average age for retiring? Not pro wrestling, but the average age for like retiring from your job, 60, 65?
It's
Like
usually 60, 65. 65 is kind of like the end of the road,
so
and you just want to enjoy
I'm
whatever.
still young. I'm still quite young. I'm just in my 30s. I mean, I started wrestling when I was, 16 or so, 15, 16, a young age. So I got started at a young age. So I've been pretty good at preserving my body. I've had a very busy schedule with wrestling. I've slowed down a little bit in the last little while, but I keep busy with the school. I'm pretty good at taking care of my body. So I don't know. I don't want to say I have another 20 or 30 years ahead of me. It's a bit ambitious, but I mean, if that's a retiring age, I'd like to still be involved in wrestling and keep going until at least my 50s or 60s. We'll see. I never want to take anyone's place. I never want to be that spot, that guy who's holding on to a spot where that spot could be someone new. But I feel like I'll always hopefully have a role in wrestling. It's what I know. If it's not actively wrestling on a show, maybe it's running the school still and some involvement and having some of my students fill in, like my original trainer. When I trained with Ernie Moore, he was in his 60s, 70s when he was running the school, which I thought was amazing, incredible. And maybe he wasn't obviously the most hands-on because he's an older gentleman, but he had some of his students help teach the next batch. So I would love to be able to do that going forward. You know what I mean? Once eventually, if I get to that age where it's a bit older for me to move around, I try to take good care of my body. But if I get to an age where it's hard for me to move around like that, I'd still like to be able to pass my knowledge on and train the next generation. And if I want anything to be, I guess, on my gravestone of wrestling or to be remembered for in a legacy sense, I just want to be remembered as a kid that loved pro wrestling and someone that always wanted to give back to the scene. I think, like I said, I've been fortunate to travel and have some really cool opportunities wrestling for major companies, having tryouts with major companies. But when it comes down to it, I just love wrestling. I love this scene. So I love to be remembered for being arguably one of the most known and successful wrestlers from the Hamilton area. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other names up there. You know what I mean? Ethan Page is killing it in AEW and very successful from this area. You look back at the day, Iron Mark Sharp. You look at the other guys like Dewey Robertson, Missing Lincoln. A lot of others came through here. I'd love to be considered for that list, and I'd love to just be known for giving back. And as much as I love my own wrestling career and the opportunities I've had, I like my legacy to be training the next generation. You know what I mean? And right now I actively have 20, 30, 40 guys out there that have been performing on shows, just a couple shows here, or if they're winning championships themselves. That's what I want to be known for, is just training the next generation.
I think you're definitely on the right track. I got one more question, and then I want to play a game with you, a new game that I invented just for you. Okay.
Okay.
My final question: when the farewell tour happens,
who
do you want to be your last opponent? Who do you want to tangle with that one more time? And you've had, like I said, check his stats, over 1,000+ matches.
Yeah.
You've wrestled a lot of amazing talents. But if it comes down to that one, okay, Rip, this is your final match. Who do you want to be staring across the ring at that one last time?
Yeah. So I've been busy. I've had a lot of wrestling careers. I've always been one of those guys that have kept busy. You're right, thousands of matches. I mean, I'm almost close at, I wouldn't say 2,000 yet, but at least 1,500. Because for the better part of a decade, from 2005, after my first 2 years in or so, I was busy. From 2005-6 to 2015, those 10 years, I was averaging, because I keep track of all that stuff, not as much as I used to, but I keep track of that, and something I tell people to do is keep track of your matches, the city you wrestle, your opponent, you know what I mean, what match number it is. And I know I'm at least 1,500 matches, because for those 10 years or so, I was averaging anywhere between 100 to 150 matches a year in a full-time schedule. So I was doing a lot of touring and traveling. I've been very lucky to wrestle a lot of like top superstars. I hate listing them off, but I've been lucky. You can check a cage match with some of the wrestling names I wrestled. I mean, a lot of guys are on TV these days. A lot of guys that are in those top promotions. A lot of people's favorite wrestlers have wrestled me. I've had the chance to wrestle them. And the same token, I've also been lucky to wrestle a lot of people in their first match or their first 5 matches. It's kind of like a test, like you said, if you will, or just like people know I'll be like a utility wrestler in the sense that I can bring out a good match out of most people. So a lot of these newer guys get the opportunity to wrestle with me in different promotions because I can help teach them something if it's their first match or their 5th or 10th match, which is very cool. But when it comes down to it, I've been lucky. I got to wrestle everyone that I've really wanted to wrestle. I mean, there's a couple top superstar names that have escaped me, but for the most part, I've wrestled all my favorites. I've wrestled most of my role models and talents I look up to. Even just this past summer, I got the chance to wrestle someone who I consider my white whale or my white buffalo in El Tornado, another Ontario wrestling legend, and someone that has just escaped me. I've wrestled, you know what I mean, all the other veterans of the scene, all the hot young up and comers for the scene, but one person that it just never worked with, that never happened, was El Tornado. It never happened until August of the summer. We finally had that match. So obviously I'd like to wrestle him again. But if it comes down to who my last match would be, I mean, I love to wrestle one of my best friends who I started with, but he no longer wrestles. And I don't think he'd be coming back. I had his last match, which was special. But I don't think he'll be around. But someone who I think might be around still when I'm finishing up, and I want to have that last match, are 2 of my best friends. I mean, if I have to choose one, that's kind of hard. So I'm going to say it's going to be a triple threat. It's going to be myself, Scotty O'Shea, and Alessandro Del Bruno. We come from the same cloth. We came up together a lot. You know what I mean? I was part of their earlier, younger years when they first started, and working with those guys, we have a natural chemistry. You know what I mean? So, I mean, hopefully, Scotty can get back in the game and wrestling down the road. We'll see what happens. But both those guys I hold really close to my heart. And those are both guys that I love, and I would definitely consider if I, you know, have to have that last retirement tour, that very final match. Those guys would be on the top of my list as the guys I would pick.
And that is a definite barn burner of a match right there.
They're awesome. Yeah, those guys are great. Those guys are great.
That's a 10-star match right there.
I'm not going anywhere though, because I made a deal with my students. All my students that get out there that actively wrestle and perform for promotions, if it's HBW or any other promotion out there, I've always told all my students, just kind of a inner agreement, at some point in their career, I have to wrestle all my students at least once. It's just a deal on the show. I have to wrestle all my students at least once. I've wrestled a lot of them already, but there's still a lot more that I have to have at least one match with. So that's got to happen for sure too.
I love it. I love it. And before we get into the game, let's talk about the documentary. One I know for sure that is coming out shortly, Theater of Violence. I know you were a big part of that documentary. I know that you were actually one of like the first interviews or the first kind of stars, talents that they highlighted in that documentary. And it looks fantastic so far. It's all about the great scene that we have here in Ontario. So I hope that that thing hits the circuits. I hope it blows up. The only drawback to that is that Adam Hayes is in it. No, I'm joking. I love Adam. Adam's a good friend of mine. Adam's a good friend of mine. Yeah, that's not to say he's awesome, Rip. I mean, he's all right. He's all right. All right. But Theater of Violence, let's talk about that, and let's talk about what you know about it so far and what kind of maybe tidbits you could give us here.
Yeah, so Theater of Violence is another documentary I've been working on. I've been working on 2 lately. One's called The Factory, which I mentioned earlier a little bit, and that's focused specifically on Hamilton wrestling and the rich history of Hamilton wrestling and people have come up through Hamilton, and focuses a lot on my school and the next generation. And the Factory documentary is, I'm basically one of the main focal points of that documentary. We also have like local legends like Ricky Johnson there being interviewed. And a lot of that documentary is telling the story of me training the next generation. And a lot of the Factory documentary also has a lot of focus on one of my students, Mike Forte, and the journey of that and what his overcoming obstacles will be. So that documentary will hopefully come out later this year. But the other documentary I've been simultaneously working on over the last couple of years as well, in the last little while, things have taken a little bit of pause because of the pandemic and stuff, but is The Theater of Violence. And Bob or Robert, he's done a great job with it. They've been capturing some great footage. I was lucky to meet them at, I think it was a PWO show, one of the first PWO shows. They came out, they were filming some stuff, and they interviewed me right away. And I've been working closely with them quite a bit. They've interviewed a lot of my students. They've come down to film a lot at my school. I'm looking forward to that Theater of Violence documentary for a couple of things. I've seen a lot of the footage already, raw cuts and edits, and Bob's doing an incredible job. He's taking it very serious in this day and age where, production is a huge part of wrestling. And you hear people like Von Vertigo, he's a huge advocate right now for production for, these wrestling companies upping the production, getting good footage. I think that's super important in content. And we have guys like Savage Media who are doing some great content right now and filming some stuff. And we're working with them right now too. But Bob's doing some great stuff. I know firsthand, he's sourcing like the appropriate audio and music and getting some stuff for that. He's doing color grading, all those like logistics and real fine tuning stuff for the footage. He wants to look very professional because he wants to pitch this 6-part docuseries. Ideally, we'll cross the fingers for something like an Amazon Prime or like one of those streaming services. He would love to get somewhere like that to pick it up, which is awesome. I've seen a lot of footage. What I'm personally looking forward to is he filmed a lot of stuff at the school when interviewing my students. But what's really cool about it is his first day down at school was one of my students, Robbie Cosmos' first day of training.
Nice.
He's filmed out quite a bit through that time, and Robbie's been doing a lot more since that time. And it's kind of cool to have that documented. I think it's kind of cool to look back and see this footage of someone's first day of training and where they've come and like their journey kind of a couple of months later and a couple of months after that. And then like kind of where they are now and going about it. So I think that's very cool. I'm looking forward to that. I just think the whole broad picture of the Ontario indie wrestling scene is going to be showcased very well. And I think it's going to be a cool project that they're doing with the Theater of Violence. I did a 2-hour interview with them one day that was just myself and the 2 guys filming and doing audio in the truck. We were just driving up to a union show for Kingdom James, and I was bringing my ring up there, set up and do a show up there. We just did an interview just talking about wrestling, talking about the school, talking about the scenes. So I think it's going to be a really cool feature that I think everyone should be looking forward to. So keep your eyes on that.
Absolutely. Can't wait for that to come out because it's all about the scene that I love, the scene that I support, the scene that I big up as often as I can. And now, Rip, the most important part of the interview, the game. The game. I call this game, you're going to be the first one to play it. So there you go. It's another milestone for you in your career. I call this one the Forced Mount Rushmore. I'm going to give you 5 wrestlers from 5 different time periods in wrestling. And you may not even like them, but you have to rank them 1 to 5. And this would be your Forced Mount Rushmore. Okay? Are you ready? All right.
Yeah.
One of the first ones, he's a GOAT. He's a legend. I'll throw out all 5 names and you rank them. So the first one I'm going to give you is Hulk Hogan. Second one I'm going to give you is somebody I find to be very underutilized in the time period he was in wrestling when he eventually got to WWE or WWF, but he definitely bigged up the scene in Montreal huge. That would be Dino Bravo. So there's your 1 and there's your 2. Number 3, I know you love this guy, but I'm going to give you someone who counteracts his abilities, and that's Dave Bautista. because I know you love Rey Mysterio, but I'm going to give you Dave Bautista because I'm interested to see where you rank him. And then number 4, I'm going to give my personal favorite, one of my all-time favorites, Triple H. And rounding out number 5, I'm going to give arguably one of the most underrated wrestlers, or actually kind of under the radar wrestlers just for the type of wrestling that he was. But I think he carved out a good niche for himself, and that is the franchise Shane Douglas. So there is your 5 wrestlers. So now all those names, Hulk Hogan, Dino Bravo, Dave Bautista, Triple H, and the franchise Shane Douglas. Where would you rank them 1 to 5? No reasons needed. 1 being the best out of the 5, 5 being the worst. Where would you rank them?
Okay, I think there's lots of factors that come into play. I mean, I'm pretty analytical, so I break these things down, but I'll try to be fairly quick with it. I mean, they've all had good wrestling careers, but I also look at what they've done for the wrestling scene. I mean, Triple H with his NXT brand, and you know what I mean, and the other guys that they've done with their legacies and what they've done for ushering in, you know, the new scene and what they've done outside the ring to some degree as well. But like a guy like Shane Douglas, someone might rank a little bit lower. I could say, I mean, the stuff he did with ECW and the storylines and the character stuff he's done is great. But if I'm ranking those 5, again, my personal take. So as you mentioned before at the start of your intro, that's what really matters. It's your show, and you can kind of choose your own opinion and list your own way. So I'll kind of do it in my own way. I'm going to put Triple H at the top.
Okay.
And then I'm probably going to go, just for what they've done when people think of wrestling, I'm going to put Hulk Hogan second, because he's one of the first people think of when they think of wrestling. Then I'm probably going to put Shane Douglas third, Dino Bravo fourth, and Batista fifth. In that order there. There's some reasons behind it, and some of it's just coming down to the numbers and the order. But with those 5 you gave me, that's the order I go with.
I love that order because that's the exact same order I would have gone with. Dave Bautista, dead last.
Yeah. Okay. You're right, though. That's definitely different wrestlers from all different eras, which is interesting. That makes the game pretty fun. So you should run with that.
I'm going to. I think I'm going to make it a standard. There you go. I got the seal of approval from the epitome of wrestling. How can you not have a better way to end this conversation? Rip, this was an honor. You and I could easily go another hour, but I got to get dinner because I'm hungry, and I got to feed the physique. I got to feed the beast. Okay, I got to feed it. Before you go, though, shout out your socials for everything that you everywhere you are, so they can follow you and the HPW school as well.
Of course. You can find me across the board on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as @RipImpact. Very easy. Just @RipImpact across all those. I'm fairly active on Instagram and Twitter a little bit, and Facebook a bit. So you can find me there, no problem. And for the school, you can find Hamilton Pro Wrestling @Hamilton Pro Wrestling on both Instagram and Facebook, and @Ham Pro Wrestling on Twitter. So please feel free to support and check those out. Thanks for having me, George. It's been a blast. I'll have to do another 5 questions with the mini host eventually as well. So we'll kind of go from there. Okay.
Absolutely. 150%. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. And you can follow me across all the socials. Link trees always in the bio of each and every video. Peace, love, and wrestling. See you guys next time. Peace. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to tune in next week for another great episode on all available podcast platforms and hosted on Podbean. Also, check us out on YouTube at Straight Talk Wrestling, on Instagram at Straight Talk Wrestling, on Facebook at Straight Talk Wrestling, and on Twitter at _Straight Talk. And if you feel the need to buy some sweet merch, check us out on ProWrestlingTees.com.
Leaving the scene with no trace, not in my league. You out of place, I'm not at the top, I'm outer space. Can't eat with us, we're out of place. I'm doing fine, I'm feeling great. You're not my fan, you can't relate. Straight talk going